Hello and welcome to the latest in our series looking at Ireland's Olympians. Not necessarily those who are competing on the track, in the pool and on the pitch, but those people from within Team Ireland who are going to make it happen. Not quite now, but in 12 months' time in Tokyo. And I'm really pleased and excited to be talking this morning to Heather Boyle, who is going to be the point lady out in Tokyo that's going to be managing and making sure that all of the stories that emerge from Tokyo are delivered back to here. So a very warm welcome, Heather. Delighted to have you with us.
Hi, Robin. Thanks a million for having me here today as well to talk. I should be over in the beautiful, sunny, very humid and very hot Tokyo right now, but the sunny climes of Wicklow will do for me for today.
Sure, hopefully you've got a nice screensaver on your phone, which is giving you that sort of moment of a window on Tokyo. But we have to hope that it will take place in 12 months' time. Take me back to the beginning of this year. Where were you in terms of the plans for accreditation and working within the Olympic Federation, making sure that all of the blocks were in place so that this was going to be our best Olympics ever?
Yeah, going back to January, we actually had we've been very busy for the last 2 years. I started in 2018 with the Olympic Federation, and it's been flat out preparation for Tokyo 2020 since then. But in January, we actually were in a really good position in terms of having a lot of things in place. We had the press accreditation actually started in 2018, that whole process. So what happens with that is in the Olympic Federation of Ireland, it's called the NOC, National Olympic Committee of Ireland, and we get allocated a certain amount of accreditations for print and photographers to go. So, you know, we have about 35 people that I handle that accreditation process, and you know, it's ongoing between then and I think it was about December of last year. We were kind of all the different agencies were deciding who was going to go, where we're going to allocate them. And we actually were in a position where we had the full list and they were submitted, and we were waiting for those little plastic cards to come out in the post, which I think would have been being processed around March or April. So we were in the final stages of that. And, you know, as part of our accreditation, we had kind of restructured how it looked from previous years, in that we had increased our allocation, and I had built up a little media team myself, where I part of my team going over to Tokyo includes a couple of press officers from the sports who will cover all of the different sports, and then a number two who will cover all sports and 4 who will cover sports specific. So we're in a really good position to actually gather information, gather stories, be able to help the journalists who are on the ground over there, and of course to feedback information back to Ireland, and sound bites and all of that kind of information. So it was we were in a very excited and very ready place for the games.
I was there in London, and seeing the size and scale of the media operation at that point in time was a real eye-opener. You know, the Olympics is bigger than anything else which is out there. The number of venues, the number of teams, the number of events which are taking place, astonishing. In 2012, though, even in those days, social media was very much in its infancy almost. Now we are going to be living through a very digital Olympics. Does that mean that you're going to be responsible for a lot more of the content, the production of the content, than might otherwise have been the case?
Yeah, it's mixed. The landscape has changed massively, and every games and every year it changes, and how people operate changes completely differently. And I know back in London, I remember I was on the media team for the Paralympic Games, and I remember even other journalists who were comparing that to Beijing, and kind of social media didn't really exist in Beijing, and it was kind of trying to compete with, like, when you have social media, everybody is a journalist, everybody can publish. And you know, where in Beijing it was all about the print articles that went out, there was kind of a frantic rush to get, there was a lot more rushed kind of journalism that had to happen, but there was a lot more of it, and a lot more emotional connection people could have with the athletes and with the sports. But when it comes to, and that evolved through to Rio. Again, I was at on the media team for the Paralympics in Rio as well, and now in Tokyo. But you are looking at a more digital driven Games. But saying that, when it comes to the Olympic Games, there are a lot of guidelines and there are a lot of restrictions around what you can and cannot do, because at the end of the day, broadcast rights come into it, because the Olympic Games, a lot of the money is generated by broadcast. When you're talking about broadcast, you're talking about the images that go out on TV. And now when you have social media, the things like live feeds, that's called a broadcast feed. And even as the Team Ireland official channel, all of that, we don't have rights to do that because we have not paid the money, which the money goes back into it. So we don't have rights to do that. So there are dedicated places where you can video and where you can't video. So where we all know that video is king in social media, when it comes to the Olympic Games, the videos and the moving pictures that you see will be coming from official feeds always, where we can maybe manage more content and more interactive and engaging and, I suppose, meaningful interviews with our athletes is when you kind of go into the Olympic Village and dedicated areas where we're allowed to be there. But there are a lot of rules about what you can and cannot do. But from a social media side, in terms of filing immediate results for people who aren't on social media, or kind of flashbacks and all that, that's that's where you have to be. So,
and that whole art of storytelling, of capturing the stories behind the scenes, so perhaps the more human, the emotional, the sort of the quieter moments, the moments of reflection, which will all make up into this wonderful mosaic that is the Olympic Games. You're going to be still responsible for that as well. Have you got an idea now about how things might be different next time around than they would have been were we going through a normal Olympic cycle?
Yeah. Do you know, the information around that it is all evolving as we're kind of going through it. Like, when I suppose in January, I was actually over the Winter Youth Olympic Games, and it was all systems go and all the plans going ahead for Tokyo. And this is a real big build up for Tokyo from an IOC perspective. We kind of moved into February, moved into March, and suddenly you realize things are changing. And of course, first of all, there was the postponement, and you're looking for a date, and then we found a date for the games. But as I suppose, as an organization, you realize that there are changes happening. You're kind of adapting to it, and to a certain extent, a lot of that, a lot of the details aren't with us yet. But I suppose what we do know, and we are hopeful that the games will happen, and we acknowledge that there are challenges, and there is a global pandemic. And right now, there's no way that anybody, I think, can see games happening right now, or maybe in a few months' time. But we are hopeful that, like, in 12 months' time, it will happen. But if it happens, I suppose we have to acknowledge that there will be changes and differences. And I think the general media talk about maybe streamlining the games or simplifying it, and how that looks, we don't have the information on that. It potentially might be reduce spectators. It might be, I imagine there will be venues that will have spectators in it. Perhaps that will look a little bit different. We don't know that yet. But if that happens, and whatever happens, what we do know is that the media team that we bring, the press that are coming over, the 35 accredited journalists, and all of the broadcast, like RTE have a huge team that they're sending out to cover all the games. As far as we know now, and the information that we're getting, is none of that is changing. So for people sitting back at home in Ireland, what they get in terms of quality and the experience that you get from the Olympic Games, it should be, in my eyes, it should be the same, really. So.
Okay. Yeah. No, we can
at all.
Yeah, we can very much look forward to that. The sense that particularly from a Team Ireland perspective, you're looking on the Olympics as a 4-year cycle. The rest of the world is looking at it on a 17 days, and we all zoom in and focus on it then. But your job, in large part, is to make sure that the Olympic athletes of the future and the past are relevant on an ongoing basis. How much of a challenge is it going to be to stretch the interest that would have been there over 4 years in a good program of communication that you would have had built out over that? You'd peaked for that almost already. And now you kind of have to tear it up a little bit and come back for another year. Is that going to be challenging?
Well, perhaps I'm being a bit kind of optimistic or looking at the sunny side of it. But, I mean, of course, everybody is disappointed that the Games isn't happening. We know that there's a bigger problem that the world has at the moment. And, we are disappointed. And we were building up to a real crescendo. We'd 4 months to go. And we were, from my end, like we were starting to ramp up the, behind the scenes with some of the sports, building up some of the profiles and doing some engagement. But if you kind of take a step back and look at, now it's 1 year to go again, and what we're seeing is that for the last 4 months, where there's been a gap in sports coverage, and sports coverage, we know it's usually dominated by rugby, by football, by GAA, and Olympic sports and Olympic athletes get a small proportion of that. What we're finding is that during lockdown and the lack of live coverage, there actually has been an increased interest and an increased relevance in our athletes. So if you look at it now as a case where we are 1 year to go, the profiles of our athletes, the endeavors of them, what they're going through, the kind of training that they do, their resilience, the super kind of personalities and feats that they do and what they go to, the light has actually been shone on them a lot more than you normally would have 1 year out from the Games. And like, I would think, I'm completely biased, but I think deservedly so. And, I'm so proud. I'm so proud of our athletes and some of the, when you see those articles, and from the media, I have to absolutely commend all of the journalists, and in particular the journalists who were going to the Games, because they were already building those profiles and they were building those relationships, but they have just, jumped in at the opportunity that they have to actually meet the athletes and talk to them. And, from on the flip side, normally athletes are away, they're training, they're competing, they don't have time to be doing interviews, and they have embraced it equally. So, I think it has, I am going to be optimistic and look at the sunny side of it, but I think that there is an opportunity there that we may not have had, and we have an extra year to build the profiles and personalities and knowledge of the sports and shine the light on Olympic sports ahead of 2021. And, which hopefully it will be when it happens, Ireland will be engaged and emotionally connected with a whole cohort of athletes who have been through something a hell of a lot harder than any other Olympians before.
I think you're right. And I think that it's a great team that we have in place already going out there. It's going to be down to you to make sure that light stays bright, stays shining on them. I've no doubt that you'll be well up to the job in hand anyway. So for now, anyway, 1 year away from Tokyo, as opposed to being there at the moment, Heather Boyle, who's the head of communications and storytelling at Team Ireland and the Olympic Federation of Ireland. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob.